The mo ganing go ko na ko ni geo to ni chip mo seo ti mi kana. Se ma gaining gi mi ni go o ni gaining chibika gi giton o ni gay chibisin the mon. Gansh mi ie mun chita nungum gagi shigak mi ish chigeot. Which out the maganyo mi u ge gagi tukuna tukuna ga swat mi se ish seo gi mi u gi gen shnabe. Ni to shigo ge gi koyog mi go ge ni nyug. Shki koy se so gi go ge ni sag. Kinessago away, Marsh seog, Mita shani gagoich out nungo mio gige, or chibakin out me, one chanokio to nige no, Chinana gata the matsago gay, and got quite knocking gale to chipmuseo me, skiki mikana. Mita she nungum gaining, get nana gata and the money got gaining, he gave it one gain it map to be bayan, garnish gaining me ish to gayan. O ni ganda ni ich ag miu gege da e maganak. Mita shie, ni mi noin dap sigo isha chige te gawe, chi it diot, chi shain diot. Ni go ge chik skituat mi no, chikane ni maat mi on ne on i chance seo. Gana shmiu gege abino chi ga ge nen dan chi shi chige. Mi go ge geta e magani nen cho bandaman. Mita shie, Machita is and chi shi chige the way. Chi at, chikane dang mi kana. Mita shigo get makina gan up kiot, megoch, ish jigeot gay no. Mita shie, shain mishnam, ganen mishnam, bizinda shinam, aha, megwich. So I just thank the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the Creator for coming to be with us this morning. Thanked all of you for being here for this special project that's happening. Thank them for the medicines we carry, for all the gifts and resources we get from the land and the water, especially the ones that we use every day. We're grateful, thankful for those things. And this morning, I was asking the grandmothers and the grandfathers to make this project work, because there's so much work that needs to be done for our young people, for our young women, our young men, our older men and our older women that are being incarcerated throughout the country, and to give them strength and guidance to be able to go home to their community, to be able to raise their children in a good way. It's because of the work that we do here, not in just organizations, but many organizations right across. It's for those young people so that they can see that medicine path that we're walking on, and also just thank them for the ancestors that guide us and show us and keep that medicine path clear for us so that we can see what work needs to be done in the future. So I say Megwich for that. And I say Megwich for the tobacco that I was given to come and do your opening. Say Megwich to all the people that do all the work that they do for our communities and for our people. And it's a lot of work. And sometimes it's really difficult. And so anything that would be helpful, I think that's what they need. It's a lot more sense of community, sense of belonging, and to be a part of something. So I say Chimegwich for all of that. Say Megwich to all of you for the work that you do, and for you, sir, for being here, taking the time to come and listen and to see, what part of the work that's being done. So I say Chimegwich for that. And that's it. Megwich, everyone.
I want to thank you, Elder Dorothy Peters, for joining us and for helping us to start in a good way. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank Chantell Barker from Aboriginal Legal Services for welcoming us here. It's wonderful to be able to join everyone for this. Now, we'll have an opportunity to have some short remarks, and then after that, we'll be going to a Q&A. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Chippewas, the Wendat, the Anishinaabe people, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm pleased to be here and to welcome you and to introduce a little bit later my friend and colleague. I actually went to law school with him, the Honourable Arif Virani, Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. And I'm especially pleased that we've come together today to talk about the steps that the Government of Canada is taking to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the criminal justice system. This is a serious and complex issue rooted in systemic racism and the legacy of colonialism, and the statistics paint a troubling picture. Despite accounting for approximately 5% of the adult population in Canada, Indigenous people make up 32% of all individuals in custody. And what's more troubling is Indigenous women accounted for 50% of all federally incarcerated women. Reconciliation means facing difficult truths, and it's about doing better as we come to know better. And it means making decisions, taking action, and building momentum. Momentum starts to build when we come together for announcements like the one that we're making here today. Organizations like Aboriginal Legal Services play an invaluable role, as do partners in mainstream justice institutions like the Toronto Courthouse and Bail Centre. You provide Indigenous-led justice services that offer alternatives to mainstream justice processes in appropriate circumstances. We had a chance to talk about that a little bit earlier, and it was really interesting to hear the depths of the different types of projects that are happening right here. And the work that you do, in turn, helps us to address long-standing and entrenched problems experienced by Indigenous peoples in the justice system. Alors, c'est avec une grande fierté que nous soutenons les travaux qui sont faits par Aboriginal Legal Services dans le cadre de ce travail essentiel. Je remercie Mme Barker et tous ceux et celles qui contribuent à ce que notre système de justice soit plus équitable pour toute la population canadienne. And I'm now pleased to welcome to the podium Minister Virani, who will provide more announcements about today's announcement.
Thank you very much. Good morning, bonjour. I want to say miigwech. And first I'll start with thanking Elder Dorothy for starting us in a very, very good way. Really appreciate that. Merci Julie for that kind introduction and for being such an excellent colleague. We were elected together back in the class of 2015, and we've been fighting for Toronto and on progressive issues like Indigenous reconciliation and Indigenous justice for a long, long time. Julie is an excellent advocate for constituents in Toronto Danforth and a defender of this city. Donc, je ferai la plupart de mes commentaires en anglais, mais j'aimerais juste souligner que je suis tellement content d'être parmi vous autres aujourd'hui pour souligner cet événement, cette organisation et le travail qu'ils font. Thank you, Chantell Barker from Aboriginal Legal Services. I feel like I was just here, just it feels like about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, but thank you for being here and welcoming us once again for this important announcement, but also for the work that you and your team does in Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area. The statistics in what Julie was just sort of outlining are troubling. And when you hear those statistics and you hear about just what the numbers say, you see and understand the challenges that we face as a country. The statistical overrepresentation of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the criminal justice system is plainly shocking. We're talking about a factor of 6 to 10-fold. And the statistics that Julie outlined are actually even worse when we talk about Indigenous youth populations. The cause of that overrepresentation in our justice system must be addressed. And what we are doing as a government is we are showing our dedication to doing exactly just that. That is why we are here today. I'm very pleased to announce today that Justice Canada is providing more than $2.1 million in funding to fund 3 different programs here at Aboriginal Legal Services. These projects provide vital legal services to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis individuals navigating Canada's justice system and providing the support that is needed. So the first project will support initiatives under the Aboriginal Legal Services Program Community Council Program, which is a criminal diversion program for low-risk offenders that reflects traditional Indigenous approaches to the administration of justice. The program will facilitate civil and family mediation. We were just talking about this in the green room through the Giweden Anang Council, which is an Indigenous family dispute resolution program. We'll also provide GLADU aftercare or caseworkers, which are critical to helping the accused with community-based services to support their healing. For those who are not familiar with some of the language I'm using, I just want to explain the reference to GLADU. This is a case that Julie and I would have been seized with at the start of our careers. In a Supreme Court judgment in 1999 called the Crown versus GLADU, the court found that the actions of an accused should be considered in light of what's called intergenerational trauma, and that sentencing could be mitigated as a result. The GLADU principles, as they came to be called, guide judges now, today, across Canada in sentencing decisions that affect Indigenous offenders. GLADU letters and GLADU reports are submitted to judges to help them inform their sentencing before a sentence is delivered. GLADU aftercare is culturally appropriate, community-based care to help the Indigenous offender cope with sentencing, find healing, and reintegrate into society, really underscoring that rehabilitation model that we need to accentuate. With today's funding, as a second component, we're also supporting Aboriginal Legal Services GLADU program to write GLADU letters and reports to Indigenous offenders. The third project receiving funding today is a needs assessment of Toronto's Courthouse and Bail Centre. With this funding, ALS, Aboriginal Legal Services, will assess the challenges and opportunities presented by the centralization of the GLADU courts right here in Toronto. In particular, this project will focus on helping to ensure greater First Nations, Inuit, and Métis input into decisions about the GLADU courts and how they incorporate GLADU principles. Today's announcement builds on previous funding commitments of up to $49 million in our fall economic statement back in 2020 to support the implementation of GLADU and the GLADU system and to help amplify Indigenous-led approaches to criminal justice. Let me just pause there. It's really critical to be funding these kinds of initiatives, to be addressing overrepresentation, to be working to advance reconciliation, but it is not a top-down model. It is not a government-led model. It needs to be an Indigenous-led approach, and that is why we are so convinced about the need to continue to support the incredible work that Chantell and her team are doing here at ALS. Collectively, these efforts will help to improve outcomes for Indigenous people when they come into contact with the justice system. Ce financement est fourni par l'intermédiaire du programme de justice autochtone de Justice Canada, qui finance les initiatives visant à assurer un système de justice accessible et équitable pour tous. Today's announcement is part of our government's ongoing commitment to address systemic racism and inequities in the criminal justice system. And let me be very clear with you that this is when I first ran for office back in 2015 with people like Julie, what I wanted to do is exactly what we are doing today. I ran for office to address inequity, I ran for office to combat inequality, and to fight against discrimination. And what we are seeing in the criminal justice system is how discrimination manifests in the justice system in Canada and what we can do to correct that. The fact that I can now do this from the position of Minister of Justice for this country is, to me, both a distinct privilege, but it's also a heavy responsibility and one that I do not take lightly. This work aligns with our ongoing work on what's called the Indigenous Justice Strategy, which we're developing in consultation and cooperation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leaders, as well as with the provinces and territories. That broad strategy is an opportunity to identify legislative and policy measures that are needed to revitalize Indigenous legal traditions and justice systems. Again, a subject that we were just speaking with Chantell about a few moments earlier. The strategy will help to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the justice system, whether as an accused or as victims. And that's an important point that I want to emphasize, that the justice system has impacts on Indigenous people in terms of when they are confronted as accused individuals, but also when they seek services as victims of crime. And in both instances, in both regards, our criminal justice system has not been up to the task, and we're working to improve that. Addressing systemic racism in the justice system helps us meet our commitments to reconciliation outlined in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, 2S LGBTQIA+ People National Action Plan, and the Federal Pathway. In doing this work, we are also responding to the TRC calls to action. want to highlight one other bill that we're working on right now that doesn't get as much attention as I think it deserves. But we also have before Parliament right now a bill called C40, which is the Miscarriage of Justice Review Commission bill. What this bill is about changing the model of how we handle wrongful convictions in this country. We know that wrongful convictions occur in every country, but we also know that disproportionately this has an impact on Black and Indigenous people in our justice system. By reconceiving and reimagining how we can deliver on miscarriages of justice, we can actually ensure that we are taking people who are wrongfully in the system out of the system. And statistics, again, are a bit alarming because the system we have in place has resulted in 27 convictions being reversed in about the last 22 years. The UK has a different system, which has a commission that actually seeks out cases. They, in the same time period, have unearthed 500 cases. It's not to say that in the UK they're doing something much more pernicious in terms of wrongfully convicting people. What I firmly believe and what our government believes is that they are finding the wrongfully convicted people. If we can establish this kind of commission, we can help those Indigenous men and women that are wrongfully convicted right now. Finally, we're contributing to achieving the objectives of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the UNDRIP, the UN Declaration Act and its action plan. The release and early implementation of the Indigenous Justice Strategy is planned for this year, for 2024. We're already working on developing a draft of that strategy and reflecting on what we've learned from our engagements to date. And our goal is to ensure that the strategy accurately reflects the needs and priorities of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across the country. That is why we've been working to balance the need for urgency and concrete action with the need to take appropriate time to develop the strategy in a co-developed manner. Ce travail, les investissements et les discussions sur nos politiques s'inscrivent dans notre objectif plus vaste de mettre en place un système de justice plus sûr, plus équitable et plus accessible pour tous et toutes. So I want to now turn it over to Chantell to congratulate everyone here at the Community Council Program, the Gladue Program, and Toronto's Courthouse and Bail Centre Program for making tangible and positive differences in the lives of so many people. Chimi Gwech, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
So thank you, Minister, for today's announcement. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge my spirit name is Gichinodenikwe, and I'm from the Deer Clan, original member of Sapatoya Cree Nation and the Treaty 4 Territory. I'd also like to thank Grandmother Dorothy for her opening prayer and remarks this morning to guide us in this day in a good way. So this funding announcement today is very exciting for ALS and continuing the great work that our staff and our team does here at ALS. When it comes to the Community Council, which is our diversion program aimed at youth, I think that it's really important to keep our youth out of that justice system. As a previous probation officer, I've seen the cycle of when they become youth and then they stay in the system for many years. So with this program, it gives us an opportunity to work with that youth and address some of the root causes and issues that they may be dealing with, whether it be unresolved trauma, the impacts of colonization, the loss of identity, and the need for healing. And when we look at the Community Council and the way that we work and we try to address those things, it is a traditional way that we used to do things. In my previous work, I really talked about how systems work before colonization, before 1492. And when a youth was acting out or a child was acting out, it wasn't frowned upon and said, we need to punish that child. It was recognized as that child has something going on within them, and that we need to come together as a community to heal that child or heal that youth, to restore balance within that individual. And that's what our diversion program does, is it looks at the root causes and ways that the community can come together to help that child or that youth that's involved in the system. And so we also look at restoring that balance, but also bringing them opportunities that they may not have access to, especially in an urban area such as Toronto. So we're able to get them to have access to sweat lodge ceremonies. We're able to take them on the land for fasting camps, land-based teachings. And it's really part of that restoring their identity that will help empower them to make good choices in the future. And then we have our wonderful Giwandanang program, which is a family dispute resolution program, which also looks at traditional ways that we used to do things as well, which is bringing in the family, but also the elders to come up with alternative solutions on how we can keep the family together, or providing or recognizing or identifying those supports that that family needs to heal and restore balance within that family as well. And so we work with other Native childs and what agencies to be able to say, what is a plan that we can put in place that will help this family to heal and either keep them together or come up with a plan to bring them back together in the future. And so what that program does as well, it gives the voice, that support that they need to speak their truth. And so that they don't feel like they're cornered or there's a threat that their children will be apprehended. So it gives them a safe space to speak their truth and be part of the solution rather than recognize as just the problem, which they're not. It's just really unresolved issues that's going on within them and supports that they may need to create that healthy family. And then, of course, we have our GLADU and our GLADU aftercare program. What I pride myself on in working for Aboriginal Legal Services is that our GLADU writers, majority of them are Indigenous. And why is that important? Is that because we can empathize. We can empathize that the people that we work with, because us too, we've been impacted by colonization. We too have been impacted by the intergenerational impacts, but we also know how to heal from it and how to break those cycles. And so when our writers are writing them, they're able to understand and empathize and put it in a document that makes sense not only to the judge, but also to that client who has to read that report, because we want to ensure that our reports are balanced and they don't walk away feeling worse than when they started the interview. And that's why we have the GLADU aftercare program, because you can't just go to somebody who has never dealt with their trauma before and rip that Band-Aid off and say, okay, now go bleed. You really need to provide those supports and put them in place, put the supports in place that they're saying, okay, we recognize these are some of the impacts of colonization, and these are some areas that you need to restore balance. But here are your supports. We can help you navigate to get access to those supports. And so as well, our GLADU aftercare workers are also Indigenous. So they also come to the table with that experience, that lived experience of how they were able to break those cycles and follow their dreams and being able to accomplish the things that they have done. And then, of course, then the last one is our needs assessment for the new Toronto courthouse, and which includes a new GLADU court. I've actually been to the GLADU court, and it's actually a beautiful space where it's set in a circle. And the 4 directions are there, and the 4 colors are there, and there's also an elder that's part of it. But with every new project, there's going to be a learning curve. And so that's why this needs assessment is really important, because then it allows us to create a committee, a GLADU committee, on ensuring that we're providing the best services and making access to these GLADU courts easier for the people who are going to attend those courts. And so this spring, we'll be doing the second report and just reviewing the first report as well. Just like anything, there's going to be a learning curve, and it's really about how do we make sure that the people that in the outer areas of downtown Toronto are able to access the court. And so, and how they're able to attend and coming up with solutions. Is it like, can we use Zoom? But that is up the GLADU committee are coming together to address those kind of concerns and by reviewing this assessment, then they're able to come up as a team, as a collective, to provide solutions on how to make the space the best for the people that have to attend that. So those are my overview of the program, the programs that we're funding, and also to look forward on what is the future of ALS. So right now we're going through a strategic plan, and how do we incorporate more healing? How do we incorporate more culture? How do we incorporate more wraparound services? And so we have with an incredible board, which I'd like to thank them as well for all of their support, but also thanking the team here at ALS, because without your support, we wouldn't be able to do this great work, because at the end of the day, the hurt of one is the hurt of all, the honor of one is the honor of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barker. I'm now going to be turning it over to Justice Canada's communications team for questions and answers.
Great, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. Alors, nous allons maintenant amorcer la période de questions et réponses. So first, we're going to take questions in the room, and then we will go to questions on Zoom. Donc, nous allons d'abord répondre aux questions dans la salle, puis nous passerons aux questions sur Zoom. Donc, pour les journalistes sur Zoom, veuillez ajouter votre point de vente à votre nom afin que nous puissions vous identifier. So for journalists on Zoom, please add your outlet to your name so that we can identify you easily. Thank you. As usual, we'll go with one question and one follow-up. Alors, le format est d'une question et une suivi. Alors, s'il vous plaît, posez vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. So feel free to ask your question in either official language. And for those joining us virtually, just a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand, indicate that you would like to ask a question so we know to turn to you. Alors, n'oubliez pas de lever votre main virtuelle pour poser une question. Alors, je vais commencer dans la salle. Et... Merci.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Mirna Djukic for Radio-Canada, so I'll ask in French. Monsieur le ministre, ça fait 8 ans maintenant que le gouvernement travaille à mettre les recommandations en place, y compris cette recommandation d'éliminer la surreprésentation des personnes autochtones dans le système de justice. Vous l'avez dit, les statistiques sont encore alarmantes. Alors, vos efforts, est-ce que vous voyez les impacts? Est-ce que les statistiques s'améliorent? Et si vous pouvez revenir en français sur quelles sont ces statistiques que vous trouvez inquiétantes aussi?
Oui, donc juste tout d'abord, merci pour la question. Donc, la situation est assez inquiétante. Disons que effectivement, on trouve que la population adulte des peuples autochtones partout au Canada, il comprend 5% de la population canadienne des adultes. Il comprend vers 32% des prisonniers masculins parmi nos prisons. Mais lorsqu'on parle des prisonniers féminins, il comprend 50%. Donc, c'est entre 6 fois plus et 10 fois plus que leur représentation dans la population en général. Ils représentent un si grand nombre des prisonniers. Vis-à-vis de votre question concernant les étapes ou les démarches qu'on utilise ou qu'on a mis en place, ce que je peux souligner, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas le premier volet. Donc, la chose la plus importante qu'on a fait, je crois que c'était à peu près il y a 18 mois, il y a 2 ans, on a promulgué un projet de loi qui s'appelait à l'époque C5, mais on a effectivement enlevé ou éliminé la plupart des pénalités mandatoires minimum ici au Canada parce qu'on trouvait qu'avec ce politique-là qui était mis en place et expansé ou élargi par le gouvernement de M. Harper avant nous autres, et ce politique-là avec les pénalités mandatoires minimum a visé à cibler la communauté autochtone à plusieurs reprises et à causer une surreprésentation de eux parmi notre système de justice et aussi parmi nos prisons. Il y a des autres démarches qui sont en suite. Disons que, comme je viens de mentionner, notre grande politique de justice autochtone qui va viser le fait qu'on a une surreprésentation. Aussi, comme je viens de mentionner, on a un projet de loi qui est maintenant en chambre, qui était bloqué actuellement au comité par les conservateurs, qui imagine un système où on traite je cherche des mots en français, mais les convictions en erreur, comment on peut renverser, comment on peut chercher ce type de pénalités et comment on peut les renverser. Et ce que je n'ai pas ajouté en anglais lorsque j'ai mentionné, c'est que ce n'est pas juste le fait qu'on a simplement trouvé 27 cas pendant les derniers 20 ans. 22 des 27 cas étaient des hommes blancs. Donc, 5 personnes trouvées avec des convictions en erreur qui sont autochtones ou noirs. Ça, ce n'est pas probable en termes des chiffres lorsqu'on voit leur surreprésentation dans nos prisons. Donc, avec les étapes comme ça, où on peut changer le système de chercher et viser et renverser une mauvaise conviction, avec les étapes comme ça, je suis sûr on a déjà commencé dans une bonne voie, mais on peut combler les défis de changer le système avec la surreprésentation des Autochtones.
Et j'ai une question de suivi sur un autre sujet, le projet de loi C-63 sur les préjudices en ligne. On sait qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'inquiétudes soulevées par à la fois des avocats, des associations. L'auteur Margaret Atwood a appelé ce projet de loi orwellien en s'adressant aux médias. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ces inquiétudes, à ces critiques?
Donc, je crois qu'il y a il nous manque une assez large compréhension de ce projet de loi vis-à-vis comment est-ce qu'on peut combattre la haine. Donc, première chose, c'est la haine, il y a une augmentation de la haine partout au Canada. C'est tout à fait clair vis-à-vis les chiffres, vis-à-vis les statistiques du Statistique Canada. Première chose. Deuxième chose, c'est que lorsqu'on voit la haine qui existe en ligne, on voit qu'il y a une radicalisation, les gens sont radicalisés par la haine et de temps en temps, il s'agit d'une façon violente du monde physique. Le plus clair exemple, c'est ce qui est arrivé à la mosquée au Québec en 2017 ou ce qui est arrivé avec la communauté Afzal à London, en Ontario, il y a 2 ans. Et on vient de terminer le procès de ce gars-là à London et la preuve était démontrée dans le record du tribunal dans ce contexte-là. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on peut viser la situation? Nous, on a décidé de mettre en place une définition de la haine. Donc, c'est plus facile en anglais, mais ça ne traite pas le contenu qui est awful but lawful. Est-ce que notre définition de haine, ça touche la définition qui était déjà établie par le Cour suprême du Canada? Donc, c'est pas moi, c'est pas Julie, c'est pas le cabinet, c'est pas le Premier ministre qui a inventé une nouvelle définition de la haine. C'est la définition qui existe depuis 2013 dans une affaire qui s'appelle Whatcott. Ça inclut les expressions de détestation et vilification en anglais. Je m'excuse, je ne connais pas le mot en français. Ça n'inclut pas les insultes, les commentaires offensifs, les blagues qui ne sont pas tellement polies. Donc, l'idée d'imaginer qu'une personne sur son propre smartphone pendant un après-midi, lorsqu'il regarde un match de football, s'il lance des insultes vis-à-vis d'un groupe, peuvent être condamnés dans une cour ou peuvent être pris par une peace bond est effectivement ridicule, à mon avis. Et ce que je peux vous avertir, c'est aussi avec le peace bond qu'on a mis en place. Et le peace bond, il faut que je l'explique un peu. Le peace bond, c'est une outil qui est déjà là dans notre propre système de justice. Par exemple, on l'utilise d'une façon préventive lorsqu'on veut éliminer la possibilité d'un homme qui est séparé de sa propre femme, d'être près d'elle d'une distance, par exemple, de 500 mètres. Donc, on utilise les peace bonds à plusieurs reprises de garder une distance entre cet homme et cette femme-là. Je crois que dans le contexte où le gars à la mosquée près du Québec en 2017, où tu peux imaginer juste il y a 2 mois, par exemple, avec le jeune à Ottawa qui a effectivement établi les plans pour attaquer une synagogue, je crois qu'une peace bond dans le contexte-là, c'est une utile qu'on a besoin. L'autre chose, c'est qu'avec ce peace bond, si on veut appliquer pour ce peace bond, il faut avoir le consentement du procureur général local. Disons que c'est une safeguard, un paramètre qui est mis en place. Et le même guardrail existe, par exemple, lorsqu'on incite la haine ou lorsqu'on promouvoit le génocide. On ne voit pas beaucoup des cas comme ça parce qu'on a des safeguards. Donc, de présumer que ça va ouvrir la porte pour plusieurs procès vis-à-vis la haine, et effectivement, ça reflète une manque de connaissance de les règles et de la propre loi et le système qu'on a mis en place. Est-ce qu'on peut répondre à la situation avec la haine? Absolument, c'est absolument sûr. Moi, je suis de la confession musulmane. Julie, elle est de la confession juive. Nous deux, on est des parents. On voit le montant de haine qui existe par toutes nos communautés ici au Canada, qui vise les enfants, qui vise les communautés, qui vise les peuples racisés. Il faut démonter et il faut répondre. On a répondu avec une façon très étroite qui a changé aussi. Donc, une autre réponse. Je m'excuse, mais il y a plusieurs réponses. Mais au début, il y a 4 ans, on a pensé qu'on va viser cette catégorie d'informations, cette catégorie en total, et on va enlever toute cette information avec une takedown immédiate. On a consulté ce qui est arrivé en France. On a consulté ce qui est arrivé en Allemagne. On a consulté Australie. On a décidé avec eux, en France, leur propre loi a été ils ont décidé que leur propre loi n'était pas constitutionnelle. On n'a pas suivi la France, pas du tout. On a visé simplement 2 types de contenus pour le take-down immédiat et les autres contenus comme la haine, il n'y a pas un take-down immédiat. Il a juste une responsabilité pour les plateformes comme Facebook d'identifier les risques, de mettre en place les possibilités de diminuer les risques, mais aussi de faire un rapport vis-à-vis le Digital Safety Commissioner. Donc, il y a de plusieurs façons, on gère la situation de sauvegarder l'expression et liberté d'expression parce que c'est essentiel pour le gouvernement, spécialement pour le ministre de la Justice. Merci.
All right, thanks, Minister. We have one more question in the room, and then we have 2 questions online. So I'll turn to CP24.
Yeah, CT. And CTV. Minister, what are your thoughts on Ford's appointment of 2 former staffers to the Judicial Appointments Advisory Committee and his comments that he doesn't apologize for wanting to put like-minded judges to put criminals in jail?
So thank you for the question. And what I can say to you is that you can judge us by our behavior. We have 3 federal appointments on what's called the Judicial Appointments Committee. Judicial Appointments Committees are critical because they safeguard the integrity of the process. A Judicial Appointments Committee puts out a recommendation. Either a person is unrecommended, recommended, or highly recommended. If people are unrecommended, the Minister of Justice, me, we do not follow, we do not pursue that application at all. What's really important about that process is that you have a process that has diverse membership. In the GTA JAC for this locality where we are, we've got 2 persons that are racialized, we've got an Indigenous person, we've got several women. We are constantly working to diversify the identities of the people that are on the Judicial Appointments Committees and in terms of their own background, because we're constantly searching for diverse candidates. So the second part of your question was about like-minded individuals. We are searching for people of the highest quality and people that represent the diversity of their communities and their country. That is what we're searching for. In terms of who we've put on as the federal representatives for a Judicial Appointments Committee, there are 17 around the country. And what I can say to you quite clearly is that we have never, in the history of our government, put a former Liberal staffer on as the government representative to a Judicial Appointments Committee, nor would we ever. That is not what the purpose of those committees is for, and that is how we guide ourselves at the federal level.
Thank you.
Is there a follow-up? No. Okay, I'm going to now turn to questions online. I'm going to start with Turia Iziri with Global News. So Turia, over to you. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Sure. Good morning, Minister. On another topic, the transfer of Luka Magnotta, what's your response to the head of Correctional Services Canada being called to testify before a parliamentary committee over his move from a maximum to a medium security prison?
So my comment on that is that I don't have a comment. We have a strong divide in this country between persons that make decisions about corrections, including the facilities where people are located and their the change of their status between maximum, medium, and maximum, medium, and minimum security. That is as it should be in a democracy like ours with strong constitutional protections. I firmly believe in the division between individuals at the political level and their decision-making and decisions about corrections, including the conditions of correction.
Okay, so maybe you can answer a question about transparency. How would you respond to concerns that some Canadians may have that some of the country's most high-profile killers keep getting moved from medium to maximum security with no real explanation to the public when it happens?
So I think that matter probably would be best, the question would probably be best put to my colleague, Minister LeBlanc, but what I would say is that we've got a correctional services a piece of legislation. It is meant to provide transparency. It is certainly meant to provide aspects where the victims of crime have a role to play. And if there's room for enhancing the role that victims play, including their notification, their ability to participate in process, including at entities like the Parole Board, we're always open to looking at how we can enhance that transparency.
All right, and I'll pass to our last question avec Delphine avec Radio-Canada. Donc, est-ce que vous avez une question?
Oui, bonjour. Donc, Delphine Young, Radio-Canada, Espace Autochtone. Vous m'entendez bien?
Oui.
Ok. J'ai une question concernant les pavillons de ressourcement. Il y en a 10 au total au Canada, dont 6 qui sont gérés par des communautés autochtones elles-mêmes. Je voulais savoir où en était le projet de pouvoir donner plus de pavillons de ressourcement en gestion à des communautés autochtones.
Donc, je n'ai pas compris tout à fait la question. Les pavillons de ressources humaines ou est-ce qu'on parle de les
The Healing Lodge.
The Healing Lodge? OK, parfait, merci. Merci. Donc, je crois que avec la situation avec les Healing Lodge, les pavillons de justice humaine, je crois que ça comprend nos efforts. Cet enjeu-là est inclus dans nos efforts de réimaginer, de réenvisager comment on livre justice par rapport des communautés autochtones. Donc, un aspect de UNDRIP et aussi un aspect de notre propre stratégie de justice autochtone qu'on va mettre en place cette année, c'est de gérer ou considérer comment on peut équilibrer notre système de justice avec plus de pluralisme légal. Donc, ceci dit, d'habitude, lorsque moi et Julie on était ensemble à la faculté de droit, par exemple, on a traité legal pluralism comme simplement droit commun d'Angleterre et droit civil de la France ou du Québec. Mais il y a aussi des autres aspects de justice, par exemple, les traditions autochtones qu'on peut toujours envisager. Donc, je crois qu'un Healing Lodge, ça fait partie de ce modèle-là de traiter et promouvoir et assister avec financement l'idée que on peut avoir plus de Healing Lodge pour soigner les gens, pour les réhabiliter. Comme Chantell vient de mentionner avec le programme qu'ils ont mis en place ici, c'est un programme de faire des wraparound services pour soigner les gens, especially lorsqu'ils sont dehors de la prison, lorsqu'ils quittent pour assister à leur réintégration dans la société.
Je suis désolée, mais je suis pas certaine que vous ayez répondu à ma question. En fait, je voulais savoir si prochainement, dans un avenir proche, il y a un projet concret de créer soit d'autres Healing Lodge, soit de donner la gestion de Healing Lodge existants à des communautés autochtones.
Et donc, je vais essayer encore une fois, mais ce que je veux souligner, c'est qu'on vise maintenant restorative justice comme un enjeu. On vise maintenant legal pluralism comme un enjeu qu'on veut assister. Mais avec la livraison de justice sur Terre, il faut aussi toujours considérer que l'administration de la justice, ça fait partie sous les divisions de pouvoir, sous notre Constitution. C'est un enjeu qui touche toutes les provinces et territoires. Donc, par exemple, M. Downey, le procureur général ici en Ontario, il m'a déjà parlé concernant ses propres Community Justice Centers et ça peut inclure les centres de justice, les Healing Lodge qui soignent les peuples autochtones. Ils viennent d'établir un, si je me rappelle bien, à Kenora, par exemple. Donc, s'il y a une façon pour nous autres de travailler avec les provinces, d'assister avec la livraison de la justice dans les centres, comme vous venez de mentionner, soit une Community Justice Center, soit une Healing Lodge, on va toujours être à l'écoute et toujours là pour appuyer ce type de programme-là, parce que ça fait partie, comme je viens de mentionner, de notre propre idée de réimaginer notre système de justice pour promouvoir les résultats plus équitables pour les peuples autochtones.
All right,
J'avais une dernière question. Est-ce que je peux la poser ou pas?
I think that is all the time that we actually have today. My apologies, Delphine. We do need to wrap it up. So before I turn to Grandmother Dorothy to provide a closing prayer, I'd like just to note for all the journalists, if you have further questions about today's announcement, please contact the Department of Justice, Media Relations at media@justice.gc.ca. Donc, si vous avez des questions complémentaires, veuillez communiquer avec les relations avec les médias au media@justice.gc.ca. So I now would like to invite our speakers back to their seats, and I'll ask Grandmother Dorothy to the front, and I'll ask again for our cameraman to not be recording the closing prayer.
Boshom Shomsag. Megoch Bimot Shang Nungum Kashay Bogak, or Nishagagi Gitango Nigichi Bisindamon. Banish me go catch a sake measure, or Niki Kanin Duke area. Or Niki non a time to Moganing work on Akunigeo, or Nichimusel, the Mikana. Megoch and Schnabim Shkikion, Kinesigo Gab me tot to wear. Kinage garbage to Mima, Kinga Enibi. Gan shigi shain me ganan mi oikshi manito. Kinagego gi mini go mino ni chimate sing. O ni sa kuchinana gata in the moat kinat magana mat the belt. Mi uge gakshkito sioti machibi shot. Mi go ge ga no kioti ma ni go ich out the maganio. We go ge. Shainim ganin. Gash mi uge gani go no kiot. Aniga go shitchigeo chich out mi un neo dae maganio. O ni ge no chisha seo to ni sa go ge chipe matisiot. Ganin mi go ge bino chio kin sa go awia. Mi tashigo ge e nungum. O ni sa go chisha seg mi e. Ganshma aja kin ma ge awia. O ni ge no nana gatai namo go ni chip matisiot mi tashi me go chgen se maga mi ni go on. Mitash Asia in Mishnam Gane in Mishnam Bisindashina ha. Megwich. So I just thank the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the Creator for coming to be with us this morning. Thanked all of you for coming and to be here. And also even for the ones that couldn't be here, our thoughts and our prayers are with them. Thank them for the medicines that we use and carry. Thank them for the gifts and resources we get from the lands and the waters, that we're grateful and thankful for the ones that we use every day. And also just a reminder that Creator loved all of us and gave us everything that we needed to live in a good way. Thanked all the workers and our good leaders for the things that they try and provide for our communities, and to have that is really important for everyone. So I say Chimegwich for that. And thank all the workers, and all throughout that do that work. Say Chimegwich for that. And just ask the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the Creator to watch over each and every one of you, your families, your children, your partners, your relatives, your communities, and even of you that have pets. Take care of them, keep them safe, keep them healthy, and take care of their well-being. Take to Megwich for that, and Megwich everyone for your time. And that's it. Megwich.